Here he is, Mike from around the world. Mike, how you doing tonight?
Pastor Paul, how you doing this evening?
I'm doing wonderful, Mike. I'm still trying to recover from your dynamic presentation at Aliens, AI, and the Antichrist. You've got people calling and writing us and emailing us from all over the world wanting to know more about what you said.
Well, I think they're going to have front row seats.
I think we all are. You're right. And according to you, millions of people are going to see this, I guess, in different parts of the world. Is that right?
Oh, yeah. There are so many things in the works, and it's like this conference coming up. It's a good one because, one area for me that really gets to me is when, folks are looking in one direction. When you have knowledge of something that is the opposite. Some of these counter intel operations that go on, they are tricky. They are very tricky. And sometimes, when good people look in the wrong places, that's not a good thing.
Yeah, so in this conference coming up, this webinar, folks, this course is going to be October 30th and 31st. And Mike from around the world is going to be one of the main speakers of this because Deep State Uncovered. There's a lot of... they're hiding a lot of things in a lot of places. We got to uncover it all.
Yes, I'm pretty sure it's going to be a pretty thorough one, especially if you have good researchers. And after this conference, I went back and did a few things with some of the speakers in there, and it's a pretty good lineup that you have there. Some of this topical information plus linked information, all that leads somewhere. And also often you may have 10 different perspectives, but believe me, the base is the same. It really is the same.
And it's a spiritual thing too. It's got to be some evil behind all this, right?
That's what it boils down to. That's one area I would just love to cover in there. It's you know what? I'll go so far as to say this. A lot of Christians, they believe in Christ, right? But these other guys, they have a stronger belief in something else. They do not doubt the entities they serve. They do not doubt them.
And so as Christians, we better get stronger in our faith and not doubt our God. We know the Bible says those who know their God will do mighty exploits. And that's how strong we got to be in our faith, right, Mike?
That's right, because they try to draw us in to their chessboard, right? And, they put a chessboard before you and they say, take a side. Well, I'm one of those who didn't take a side. And, so I can stand back and see that game. I'm not playing that game with them. And but you'd be surprised how vast that game is. And they've accounted for everything. I mean, everything they can find, they've accounted for. And one of the I'm sure somebody covered this in AI, but one of the things that's very difficult to overcome for anybody is to predicate their steps, because they've already trended what our responses are. And so, but I know this, if anybody operates by the Holy Spirit, not by intellect, but by the Holy Spirit, if they operate like that, that person, whoever operates like that, can never be trended. They can never forecast your movements.
That's amazing. And so is the church, or are we targeted by the deep state?
Well, the church it's always been a target. In fact, it's been infiltrated. And it's pretty sticky, but it's been infiltrated for a great many years. And that's one of the alarming issues that will be uncovered also, especially as time goes on. My prayer is that people keep their faith about them, and that they realize that in the end we stand one-on-one before Christ. That way a person won't lose their balance because somebody else to their left or to the right fell.
Amen to that. Amen. All right, Mike, got to bring up some other stuff here on the table. Okay, you predicted, and this is amazing, but you predicted that we better watch for Mount Stromboli. Keep an eye on Mount Stromboli in Italy. And 10 days later, it exploded. And the articles I read said without any warning. So how in the world did you know Mount Stromboli was about to blow?
Well, Italy is a bad trouble spot, and I'm telling you right now, that's not near enough pressure to relieve some of the what's building up underneath the entire province of Italy. Right now, Italy could face a real decimation. I mean, that entire landmass could really be blown off into the ocean. It sits in one of the largest volcanoes in the world. In fact, we have two of the largest volcanoes in the universe, in our solar system, are right here on this Earth. One is Tamu Massif, one is sitting underneath Italy, right? I know that everybody looks at Yellowstone, but I can tell you this, anything that's public, and when they, of course they're going to watch it, and it can do damage, it is not one of the monsters that's right here on Earth. It cannot destroy the planet, but the one sitting under Italy can destroy the planet. It can destroy life as we know it, certainly. And Tamu Massif could take out everything in a very short time. And these two magmatic centers are showing great activity. Those are no-go zones, and they have a few zones near Italy now that are being watched closely after certain probes have been, just totally melted. They're watching it closely because we're going through tectonic shifting right now. As I had mentioned that last year, I believe it was, is that our crust, we're going through some tectonic shifting, and the more we go through this, it's just like an eggshell. With an overboiled egg, we're going to have cracks all over the place. Unfortunately, unlike an egg, we have magma underneath those cracks, and when it does crack, it's going to consume, because we will entertain sinkholes the size of a city at some point. That will really get people's attention. I mentioned that a few years ago also. But you have these type developments, and the Earth is massive. The scale of the Earth is so massive that that seems like that would be unreasonable, a sinkhole the size of a city. But in truth, that would be like taking a pebble off a beach. So that's not going to, it's not going to really make a big impact as far as the Earth is concerned. But we are certainly going to entertain that. Pastor Paul, due to more and more absorbed energies in the Earth. And the Earth is just like a lithium battery. It's being overcharged. And because of that overcharge, that all that energy translates into heat, excessive heat. Underneath the ground, we have some severe issues. Underneath some of the ancient underground cities that are being occupied right now, there's some issues. And it's really causing scientists, privileged archaeologists, and some of our government employees is really causing them problems because these places are becoming very unstable. And but they have always known they would become unstable because there are, a long time ago, evidently, somebody put vent holes or they're very specially designed chambers in these places that are almost like relief valves, overflow valves. And sometimes, like in the desert, if you hear some strange noises in the heavens, it's actually coming from the Earth. Well, in a lot of cases, it's coming from the Earth. Some of these booms and some of these weird, odd noises. They've opened up vents in the Midwest a few times in the desert to try and pump some of the pressure out, because every time we have a shift, it builds up pressure in some of these pressurized underground facilities. And that's just not a good thing, because some of these are naval facilities where submarines go right up under the U.S., it's highly protected areas. But there are so many changes right now, and things are becoming quite unstable. It's only going to continue.
Also, Mike, besides you predicted that Mount Stromboli would blow, and that, how do you predict that? It's because you've been really studying that area, as you say, and it blew. It was quite an eruption, but you're saying that there's going to be a lot more pressure building there. Also, we had an earthquake up in Alaska a couple of days ago, 7.8 magnitude. There were tsunami warnings. They were very concerned for that peninsula there, and also even as far as Hawaii. But fortunately, by the grace of God, it did not happen. But it kind of made us scared because there was a 5.7 earthquake or 5.9 over in Canada, and real close to the Cascadia subduction zone. There was even a 3.9 in the state of Washington a few hours later. So are we about ready to see something very, very dangerous up in that area between Alaska and Cascadia? Your opinion?
Well, I can make one observational prediction. You remember that time when you were asking me what's the next thing I would watch? Just about 3 years ago, and I said I named an island in the southern hemisphere, and the next day a volcano blew. You remember that?
I remember that. Yes,
okay.
I did. Yes.
And that was right. I believe that was in the conversation where I said, when they say they can't detect volcanic eruptions and earthquakes, they're lying. They can detect, they can forecast earthquakes with dangerous accuracy. They can forecast erupting volcanoes with dangerous accuracy. So they're absolutely informed about what's going on, right? The one thing they can't do is get past their own ego and pride. They're being advised, by the way, electronically, for the most part, meaning that they're running simulations 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And they run simulations for the simulations. And they have to be, they want to be as accurate as possible about the atmosphere and about the crust of the earth, because these are the times where massive movements are taking place. And I hate to tell everybody, but all that energy that everybody had in 2011, 2010, waiting for 2012, where are those people at? We need those people right now, because a lot of the subjects they spoke about in 2010, 2011 about DHS, do you see that coming about even tonight? DHS agents are on the move, and there will be some people on lockdown. There will be some people in their homes that can't get out. They will go in and get certain individuals. It's not going to be pretty, but although it's under some varied circumstances. But anyway, that same flame that everybody had prior to that time, they need it now, because this is the time where things are changing. So I'm going to make this small forecast here. In South America, I'm watching South America. Pastor Paul, South America, near Mexico, right? Going further south. If they have a volcanic eruption, 1 or 2 volcanic eruptions, California is in trouble, bad trouble. Right now, the pressure on the Cusco plate is enormous. I don't believe anybody has ever seen it that high. If that plate vibrates just a little, and it can do that by volcano. See, a volcano is the only thing right now that I know of that could go off, right, causing a bit of a collapse in other regions of South America. That would actually be enough to shift that entire plate region. Now, if it shifts, California is not going to have an earthquake. It's going to actually break.
What?
Forget an earthquake. It will break. There's no way, based upon, I was looking at some 3D mapping of California. The way it's situated right now, if that Cusco plate gives way, it's going to break. It's going to snap. And it's going to snap badly. And we're talking about a landmass that's been fortified with buildings and rebar and all that stuff. So that's going to help to keep that landmass together. But they have a rock layer that's already beginning to crumble under pressure. And if we have something to ignite that, or to, let's just say, to let the safety cap off that plate in California, it's going to crack. You're going to have several cracks in California. So South America seems to be a trigger for what could be one of the most terrible events we've ever seen.
Well, are you saying South America? So are you saying Mexico primarily?
Mexico's included. Anything Mexico and south of Mexico, if they have a volcanic eruption, right? A volcanic eruption would allow enough magma to escape. Now, it has to eject quite a bit, but it can let enough magma to escape to cause some of those magma tubes and vents to collapse. Through that collapse, it's going to allow that plate to shift just a fraction of an inch, because if it shifts a fraction of an inch, it'll be like removing a pin, right, from a booby trap, and then poof, that whole place is going to go right up in the air. I mean, right up in the air. So what we're talking about is, imagine New York City sitting sideways. That's what I'm talking about from the 3D mapping.
So in other words, if a major volcano erupts and releases a ton of magma somewhere in southern Mexico or maybe Guatemala or down in there, it could cause the tectonic plate to give, and it doesn't take much now because it's so much pressure on it, and it would cause the landmass to just erupt and go up, and then that means it would literally lift San Diego,
cities and all. Yep, they would sit probably at about 45 degrees.
That would be everything. Everything would slide off into the ocean. It'd be with the biggest landslide in history of modern and in the last 2,000 years.
Yeah, when I was looking at the architecture of California, there are certain places in California where they built atop honeycombs of reinforced, that very old rock, and some reinforced tunnels. And in fact, tunnels they reinforced that were actually bomb-proof. And so they built that city on top of there. So if that landmass goes up, some of those buildings are going to stay intact. Right? They're going to stay intact. It'll look like something straight out of a movie. And if that landmass goes up, because most of it is rock, concrete, rebar, reinforced steel beams, you name it, that's going to be an ugly sight, but something that'll be horrible. Now, this is why I'm watching South America. It's why I'm watching the entire southern hemisphere right now for instabilities, because if that takes place in South America, we're going to have a problem, and it's not going to take that long. That won't take long at all. I would say it would not be instantaneous because of the nature of magma, but as the magma is ejected, that's going to cause greater and greater instabilities. And then in California, there's going to be a few snaps, but one notable snap, and that will also, this plate, based on simulations, will cause a chain event all throughout the U.S. So if something happens on the West Coast, then all bets are off for all the way up to, I believe it's Alabama.
What? No, wait a minute, Mike. You keep. Wait a minute. Are you saying that the whole southern half of the United States would come up off the ground and tilt?
We would have. Let me tell you how big of a problem that would pose in every single case because of the rock strata, the way it's sitting, and the pressures involved. If something like that happened in California, the Grand Canyons would shift. They would smash, collapse on each other, right? So there would be no more Grand Canyons. We would also have an upthrust in the Appalachians, right? So some of the Appalachians would go straight up, the other ones would cave in. This is, when you start seeing these simulations, it's nothing like the movies. The movies are entertaining. They do not show cause and effect. They certainly don't demonstrate the relationship between the West Coast and the East Coast. And unfortunately, because it's so popular, when you say earthquake in California, everybody thinks it's going to be isolated. No, it won't be isolated. And so I'm watching that very closely. But we also have another issue on the East Coast. That's a growing issue, and I talk about it on occasion, about the Atlantic. And so we've had, it's a matter of time now, because in all honesty, with everything I'm seeing in a very close time period, we could experience a dual event of some type on both sides. And it almost seems like it's inescapable. So it's not a question of if, it is a question of when.
So the Earth is cracking apart. Is Planet X, is the gravitational pull going to affect these tectonic plates throughout the Earth?
They will. I believe they have been. We not only are those effects taking place, but we're having too much energy coming from the heliosphere, just shooting in towards our planet here. And our planet, through its magnetosphere, is soaking all of it up. In fact, I believe in another month, we're going to have some bad changes in our magnetosphere. on top of everything else, which is something that we'll pay more attention to as that time comes. But if I'm not mistaken, Pastor Paul, I believe that detection has taken place. A type of detection has taken place, which is going to permit a lot of data to come forward in the next month or two. Well, I'll say month. 2 months, no guarantees, but in a month, we'll get a lot more data on something that's causing some drastic effects, not only on Earth, but also on Mars, also with Mercury. And we're gonna know some time frames during that time when that data comes back. And it's not sketchy data this time. A lot of it's been speculation, and certainly the idea is to pinpoint things, which is why they have CERN working overtime to pinpoint some things prior to anybody with one of these telescopes on Earth before they're able to see it.
Okay, now there's people, I'm getting emails every day. We're getting inundated with people from Florida who are really freaking out. Okay, there's reports on YouTube that Florida is going to get hit with asteroid, a bunch of asteroids or some kind of and people are literally fleeing Florida. I mean, they're driving around in the woods. They're looking for places. People are setting up relocation funds, all kinds of weird stuff going on. Can you tell me, can we calm down on this, Mike? How can you say Florida is in the bullseye? Can they even say that? Is that possible, or is that going to happen?
It depends on how close these objects are. It depends on if they have, through optics, if they can see, if they can calculate distance. And believe me, that takes a lot of calculations. But if they can calculate distance, rotation of the Earth, position, and proximity to what they're seeing, if they can do all that without making mistakes, then sure, they can better tell somebody what area they're going to hit on Earth. But I have to give caution with that, because in a lot of these, when you're seeing something like that far out, and you're utilizing simulations and or digital optics, which are based, they kind of rate gases and things, the distance can often be obscured, which puts a time element. See, when you're working with time, it can throw the entire trajectory off. If you're wrong for 10 seconds, that could change it from, being Russia to being America. 10 seconds can do that far back. In fact, 1 second can do that far out. So the closer these things get, the better they're going to be able to pinpoint where it's going to hit. I would say right now it's too soon. It's too far. Things are too far out of range for anybody to make that calculation right now. Well, anybody civilian-wise to make that calculation. I can't see there's no equipment they can actually come to that conclusion unless that was some sort of somebody's spiritual insight, or if the Lord gave somebody a prophecy like that. But as far as just the average person looking through optics, I can't. There's no way they can come to that conclusion.
No, it's supposed to be someone who's got somebody connections in the Pentagon and maybe some other intelligence agencies that are saying that this is it. But my opinion is the cloud that you've been talking about, the cloud. And folks, this is Mike Around the World from Council of Time. There's over 5,300 of you with us live on our main YouTube channel, plus a lot of folks in the backup channel. And we got people watching from all over the world, all the other channels we're on. And if you're watching this on the archives, I want to say welcome to you too as well. But I think, Mike, that this is way too, the clouds that you see coming, the cloud of debris is somewhere still out there 2 years or so. We're going to get some of it earlier than that, though, aren't we?
Oh yes, we're going to get quite a few things much earlier than that. But as far as I want you to think of this, the Earth is rotating, correct? And so if a set of objects like Levy 9 were going to hit the Earth, it would really smack more than Florida, because there are too many calculations. Because you're looking at power antenna gain, flux distance, radar cross section, all these backscatters and everything. You have to pinpoint these things down to a single target. There's just not enough data with the optics that are available right now. Now they can come up with a general idea based upon forces that they can already see, but that would more or less, somebody could tell you it would hit on the maybe the parallel of where Florida sits. They could tell you that, but as far as hitting right there in Florida, I just can't see that. That would be if you drew a ring around the Earth where Florida sits on a map, then you would have a general area of where they may impact. But the cloud I see is going to cover one whole side of the Earth. And as the Earth rotates, this cloud's not going to pass through in one day. We're talking about a week or so this cloud will go through. So that's the entire surface of the Earth being bombarded. It's just not a one-day thing.
What?
Then we have optic. They have eyes on something out there, meaning that the answer to why our asteroid belt is chopped off at the end is about to be answered. Upon that revelation, we're going to see many more pronounced objects inbound. But let me give you the key thing to watch, Pastor Paul.
Okay.
The key thing to watch is for blood rain. You've got to watch for blood rain, because that will give an indication of the gases that are in this other system that have entered into ours. We will see that blood rain before we see any objects in the sky.
Okay, now that's huge. That means when you say before, and that means, and that's what the Bible says actually in the book of Revelation. It talks about the blood, blood and fire and pillars of smoke. It's actually in the book of Joel chapter 2, and before the great and terrible day of the Lord. So when you say blood rain, you're meaning that iron oxide dust is going to turn the rain reddish, almost like blood, right?
And even more than that. Now, it's a known fact that they have samples of something. I wish they would share more of this stuff, but I guess it'll be released in time. But there are actual cell samples. They look just like cell samples.
DNA, almost like DNA.
They're in a lot of inbound objects, right? They're frozen in space. Don't ask me how they stay frozen, but they're frozen in space. Upon entry or close proximity to Earth, they somewhat, it's almost like they spring to life, if that makes sense. They are reddish in color, right? They are passive to your system. That won't really make you sick. Iron will make you sick because it's mixed with other things, but you're looking at you're looking at things that are not quite, it's not, these are not metaphors in the Bible sometimes. And when you find these things out, it makes you take another look at Revelation, period, because you're looking at cell structures without a nuclei. Now, they have samples of this, and they've gained samples at least over 100 times that have fallen to the Earth, and they know they're not from Earth. They know this. So that mixed with some very exotic metals with a compound that are not usually found in space. So even to say iron oxide, I'm just finding this out, even to say iron oxide could be, a portion of something, but it certainly is not the main reason, because most of these samples that are taken from certain objects, right, that they do samples on the International Space Station, are more like a hot oil, is what they feel like, a hot oil. Now, we're talking about, Pastor Paul, a hot oil in space. How does that work? It's cold up there. How in the world can you have hot oil in space? You can't have hot oil in space,
no,
right?
Right.
Nevertheless, they're finding some very exotic chemical compounds that are coming in. It will change certain types of physics and the chemical structures that we know. We're starting to really find out. We don't know anything about what constitutes, this, that, and the other, because there's some very exotic elements out there.
It's God's great creation, Mike. It sounds like that we've just scratched the surface on what is really out in the vastness of God's great universes of space, just like we've just barely scratched the surface of what's in the bottom of the ocean on our own world. We're so far behind God. God's ways are so much higher than our ways, than the heavens are the earth, is what I'm hearing you say. There's even the possibility, I think you're saying, that there's almost like frozen DNA cells that are coming, that have fallen to earth from space. Is that right?
Yeah, well, they've had it in Sri Lanka, they've had it in India, they've had it in Washington State, they've had it in Alaska, they've had it in Canada. It's been a few places they've gathered samples from, but when they gather it from the ISS, that lets you know this is not some Earth-based material that we're dealing with here. And and in fact, they've been finding this even inside some of the rocks for a while now. They just, it goes against Darwin's theory. And so, they're not going to voice too many things that go against Darwin's theory, but they're like a blood cell, but they have no nuclei whatsoever. But they're just like a blood cell, and they're red, but they have no nuclei.
Mike, also we want to talk about what's going on in China, because the rain, the flooding, Yangtze River, there's 3 different dams that have been real close to bursting. They've let a lot of water off to try to release the pressure, but now a massive landslide today is just incredible. I mean, it's incredible landslide. Brock, show us a picture of this. Over 8,000 people have had to, look what this was an insane landslide. It's still not done. And close to 9,000 people had to be evacuated. A lot of people have lost their lives in the last 2 weeks. And so what's going on in China as far as the rain and the flooding? It's unprecedented.
Yeah, China is situated in a very bad place. Siberia is having a similar issue, Pastor Paul. We just have swinging weather patterns, and they are abruptly changing. We're talking about places that were once permafrost are now, 90 degrees? And so with all these fluctuations in temperatures, they're causing permafrost, of course, to melt, but we have an additional component in the water element. And what it's doing is causing cloud retention to be about 75% higher than what it normally is. That means your average cloud, instead of weighing 250,000 tons floating by your head, is going to be 75% more than that. That means it's able to hold, or moisture is able to stay aloft in the atmosphere more than usual. So we have a change of lots of elements. And again, Pastor Paul, these weather patterns, these stalled fronts, these persistent fronts, this same type of pattern started right before the jet stream changed the first time. And so if we entertain a change in the jet stream, well, I think everybody remembers reading about or hearing about or learning about the Dust Bowl. We're going to have another one.
And Mike, let's move to another subject real quick here, and that is China espionage. Now, the president always suspected, we've known that China has been stealing our intellectual property. But the president has shut down angles. He's revamped the FBI, at least at the top. The deep state, though, is deep everywhere in all these different intelligence agencies. But I guess my next question to you is, now in Houston, they're burning documents, and I'm understanding that some of these documents were tied to Wuhan lab. And then now they're hiding a spy, Chinese spy, over in San Francisco's consulate. And there's a report just came out this evening that there could be Chinese spies in 25 different cities operating as either students in science, professors in universities, and or diplomatic immunity working within the embassies and consulates. How bad is this spying ring in America with China?
First of all, we have so many Chinese over here. It's not funny. Remember a couple of years ago, people began to ask questions about them buying up the land. The Great Lakes issue popped up. All these issues popped up about China buying up property or us selling property to China in the U.S. Well, they were sending people over by the droves to come check that stuff out. And so now, I was laughing the other day because I think President Trump set them up. I just do. Anyway, I think he set him up. But,
so you're saying he set up the Chinese?
I was laughing the other day because he was so nice to the Chinese and he was very accommodating. But he was at arm's distance. He really didn't let them too close, but he was a little overly nice to him, right? And we're talking about the same guy who, when he was not president, he kept saying they were ripping us off. Then when he was president, he said the same thing, but then all of a sudden, right, a topic rose, and then he was nice overnight. And then right after he was nice, some sort of accountability started coming out, and this Wuhan virus popped out, and then, he just changed. It was almost like he just baited them right into such comfort that they share too much information. That's what it seems like, because there's information that has been shared by China they have never shared before. And they did that with President Trump. And as soon as he gets a hold of it, it's almost like he said, aha, I gotcha. But they are getting rid of quite a few things. And they are, no matter what anybody thinks, they're people just like you and I, but they have a different belief system. They believe in this centric view that they are a type of chosen people and everybody else is in the way.
Yeah, yes they
so
are.
Of course they're going to step into a nation and do what they do. Again, when you're dealing with nations, the faith of that nation means everything, because no matter how friendly you get, how much money you give them, how well trade is going, everybody's going to fall back on that fundamental faith, and everything's going to be built around that faith. So with a communist country like China, there's just no way in the world you can trust a nation like that being over here. And their average high school kid is almost like a college graduate in the USA. So when their high school kids graduate, they have a kind of like a master's degree in computer science. So you have an entire nation who is savvy, just waiting to be assigned to come and do something to the U.S. or any other nation. And they're over here. MH370, remember that? Some of the technical firms that were over here, and they had, what did they have? They had the Chinese interests at heart. These were American companies who were in direct competition to who? China. And so you have all these little background stories, a secret war, if you will, that have been taking place. But China being over here, I hate to tell people this, China is a known fact that China monitors civilian equipment, computer systems owned by the populace. See, if you cannot hack the mainframe, then what do? You hack everybody that uses the mainframe. And who are the easiest folks to hack? The citizens of a country. So if you can hack the citizens of a country, if you can compromise what's inside their computers, you can essentially use their computers as the machine that attacks that nation. So they're doing it from within. And they've done this for quite a while. It's just very difficult to find them, which is why Microsoft and Apple and all these guys have been putting out updates like crazy. They have been in a secret war, right? A cyber wave really is a high-stakes cyber war. But I suspect he'll get the rest of them. I suspect he knows more than what he's telling. And that's his card he's holding, but he knows more than what he's telling.
Right.
And
well, also though, whenever nations, when you look at what's been going on here, the trade war, the intellectual property protective war, the Wuhan virus, which looks like is a bioweapon of war. If we start seeing consulates and embassies closing, both in America and China, that's what goes on just before people finally start shooting at each other. Are we dangerously moving closer to World War III with China?
Well, I'd say China's involved. Even right now, look at today. You have Middle Eastern movements. You have Middle Eastern movements today. We have a lot of people that are on the move as of 2 p.m. Eastern time today. Some of the world's largest, or the nations with the largest naval forces, have been on the move also today. So certainly tensions are high, and because the stakes are high. But COVID-19 seems to be the perfect, almost like the perfect cover to keep everybody occupied. But the military is having to deal with all these different changes, certainly in China. China's movements, even today, are just speculative at best. And then you have all this diversion here in the USA. So while everybody's tied up, they can't complain about other things that are going on outside. Is a war starting? I would say it is starting. I would say it's Middle Eastern based. Right now, it's Middle Eastern based. I would say Jerusalem has lost one of its critical allies today. It's gonna just turn its face against Israel.
What? Wait. Who's that?
Because you have this today. There was a discussion about Iran and Iraq. Okay, you have a lot of individuals that are beginning in the Middle East today. In the Middle East, they're starting to say things about Hezbollah, open about Iran, right? That Hezbollah is Iran's little proxy, the little puppet out there in the Middle East. Right. But Iraq wants Iran, part of Iraq, the leadership in Iraq wants Iran to, they're trying to justify the cause of why Iran is in the country, but the populace wants Iran out of Iraq. That was a big thing that dropped today, and because it went public like that, since then, many people have gotten involved, and it's been a little tension rising over there. So Iran had to actually Iran has been put in a position where now they're either going to have to go forward with some plans, right? Or they're going to totally, I don't see an alternative, Pastor Paul. They're going to have to totally go forward with some plans. What else can they do? They're going to save face, right? They're a nation over there full of angry individuals, some passive, but most angry, with a faith system that is going to be cruel at best. Well, they're in Iraq right now, right?
Yes.
They're in Syria. They're inching more and more into Syria.
A lot.
They're in Lebanon.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
They're bothering Turkey. So you're looking at a troop.
They're in Yemen. They're in Yemen.
Made a mistake on, because even today they began to name some things. Benjamin Netanyahu got some news. It didn't put a smile on his face. And so now Israel is being forced to really guard all fronts. They did deployments last night. They did actual deployments today. They're sending some more out tomorrow morning because they have to actually send out a lot of equipment. Egypt is on the move, of course, you know that.
Yeah.
But nobody can barely trust Egypt, and Saudi Arabia is double-tongued. So it looks like a very unstable situation there. Now, they will actually draw people into this fight because of their equipment, because of their logistics. You have India over there trying to stave off China. That's unavoidable right now. Yeah. And if that ensues, you better believe Turkey will take advantage of it. Russia will take advantage of it. And then before you know it, everybody's drawn into it.
So what you're saying is, right now Iran, they have a lot of people, they do have troops and proxies working in Iraq, because there's a certain faction of Iraq that is Shiite. It's kind of a half Shiite, half Sunni nation. And of course, Iran is Shiite. And then in Syria, they've had a lot of locations. Of course, Israel's been going in there bombing those locations, trying to keep Iran from getting too big of a foothold in Syria. But Syria is also Shiite. And then in Lebanon, Hezbollah is a radical Shiite group that Iran's been funding. Hamas in Gaza is a radical group that Iran's been funding, and the Houthi rebels in in Yemen are another radical Shiite group that's been shooting rockets into Saudi Arabia. So you're right, as far as the fact is, Israel is really surrounded by nations that either hate them or they can't trust them. And the United States has got to be on the highest alert we've been in a long time for the Middle East. Would you agree?
Yeah, especially since they found an additional, they found 23 Hezbollah missile launchers. They found an additional 13 about an hour ago.
Where?
Well, a little bit before I got on the phone call. And these are not their standard, 4th of July rockets either. So they're not sure. They're trying to get eyes and identify what type of equipment this is. They suspect it's Russian made. And if it's Russian made, Pastor Paul, you're looking at, that's a game changer, because there was an actual discussion. Do we need to, do they need to ready some tactical nukes, right? Something with that yield.
Right.
I hate to say it, but it's really to that point, because Russia has been selling, Iran supplies Russia's income, and they've been trading things like crazy.
Right.
North Korea is not innocent either. They are there to run. They're like, running things with China, and it's a lot of support they're gaining over there. And the more the U.S. stands up by itself, the more isolation happens with these other nations. Or they're just cutting us off left and right, because some nations are even scared that without international cooperation, like England, for example, without international cooperation, parts of Germany, how in the world can they survive? Right? Some of these countries need international cooperation. They need negotiations in order to exist, because they're afraid that if there are no negotiations, then the U.S. will stand up fine by itself, but these other nations may not fare too well.
Right.
So they're afraid to totally stand up by themselves. They need us. They need the U.S. to stand with them so they can have that strength. Because if they're cut off, that's a different issue. And I fear that something similar to that is about to happen.
Folks, Mike around the world, really giving us some great information here tonight. Some of the stuff is just breaking. I mean, it's nowhere in the media right now. And I know you're exactly on this, because these things have been surfacing. We've been hearing about them from some of our contacts in Israel, who've been very concerned about. Egypt has put thousands of troops on the border with Libya. We know Turkey is really getting aggressive. As you know, Mike, Turkey's they've been bombing the Kurds and the Yetis, and I'm talking civilians. They've been posturing to take over parts of northern Syria for that oil. I think they might want to take Libya, and Egypt doesn't want to let them get that. And Haftar's caught in the middle. The United States has been waffling where we stand on that. So, yeah, this is getting to become very dangerous. It looks like Turkey, Russia, and Iran have built a coalition that's a dangerous coalition. And I thought Turkey was part of NATO. So France and Germany France and England are very nervous. That's what you're saying. They're like, they want to just totally lock arms with us, but they're kind of scared. What if this coalition becomes too strong? We're getting into the time where Jesus said there will be wars and rumors of wars, and nations are rising against nations, aren't they?
Pastor, and it takes me back to prophecy every single time, which is why prophecy will always be my anchor. Because I'm looking at all these different developments, and then you wonder, how in the world can the world actually fall under the guise of this individual who comes from a small people, who has this unholy alliance, who steps into Jerusalem and tramples it underfoot for 42 months with all the power of the USA, with all the power of Germany. You're talking about unified coalition forces. If we still exist during that time, why didn't we do anything? And right now, that's my anchor, the Bible, despite what happens in the world, because I know that in the end it's going to end up just like God said it would. And then you begin to look at the world right now, and you're beginning to see some of the telltale signs as to why we didn't respond to help Israel, why Europe didn't respond to help Israel, despite the language, rhetoric, talk, UN resolutions, whatever the case may be. Nobody responded. And then you begin to see it develop, and you can hardly believe it. Nevertheless, it's right there, and the data points are right there. That the USA right now, our military is inside the militaries of the nations, because the lockdown didn't help it. But there's a morality issue. We're not talking about being good or bad. We're talking about being motivated behind a cause. When this country divides, and it's a public divide, soldiers have an issue, and they also have this check of conscience of, who do I fight for now? Right. Because if a soldier does not believe in the cause of the government, that's going to be a problem, because the government took a side, and if a soldier does, that's going to be a problem for those who don't. And so you have this internal strife that will develop, and that will limit the performance of our troops if we have to do anything. So that's not a good situation, and it's happening. It's happening right now as we speak, and it's almost like it's this slow creeping thing that nobody can stop. We see it coming, but who can stop it? It's no matter what people are trying to do, is still creeping forward. So it's just, that's why prophecy has to be my anchor, because you can almost have hope in the wrong things if it's not.
That's exactly right, Mike. And so we're watching it play out right before our very eyes, guys. And wow. Mike, is Malta a country?
Malta? Is it a country?
Is it a country?
Well, I guess you could say it's a no.
I mean, it's just off the coast of Greece, but is that a country by itself?
No. That's not a sovereign place, not Malta, is it? But you know what, Pascal, it could be.
Yeah, and it's just something to think about. Who's coming from Malta? A small people.
Malta is Gozo province in the North Campus. I don't think so. I know it is Malta. Yeah, it is.
It is. It's a small island country.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is.
So it's something to look into.
That is a country. I don't think it's sovereign. I believe it's joined with. I believe that they are funded with the Brits. I believe the Brits took care of them on several occasions. But I believe it is sovereign. So,
I think it is. Yeah, it's a small island country, folks, and it's just something for everybody out there to research. But there's an individual on the rise whose family came from Malta, and that's could rise up from a small people. Check it out, guys.
That's where the Moors, right? Isn't it?
It is.
That bloodline. Okay.
Yes, it is.
That's what got me, because there's a practice of Malta active in the
Yes,
world
there
right
is.
now.
Yes,
Do you know
there
that?
is. Yes.
It's active in the world, and so that threw me off a little bit, because these guys go back a ways. But yeah, okay, I got you.
Okay, but you've been keeping me on suspense with the seed of the serpent. The secret serpent, the brotherhood of the serpent. I'm still trying to figure out where maybe you'll tell us more about that in the conference.
I don't think the phone will go dead, but you know what? Hopefully people know now that some of these leaders are they are highly active in seances, Pastor Paul.
Yeah.
They operate by different identities. They have a duality with them. And it's a strange thing to see.
A duality in a seance is taking on a possession of a demon, willfully of a demon spirit. That is that's blasphemous. That's very blasphemous.
Yeah, that's what they are. And they're working in the White House. You can scarcely. It's hard to see who they are, but I can tell you this: their energy gives them away.
Wow! Yeah, with their energy. Well, let's leave it there, Mike. You're going to have to give us some more information on that serpent brotherhood. Maybe in the deep state, you'll break some of that out on us. I'm
sure it can.
Okay, Mike. Can we have you next Thursday night? We'd love to again.
Yes, help me keep an eye on the southern hemisphere, Pastor Paul.
Oh yeah.
One more thing, Pastor Paul. I got to tell you this. One more thing. Listen, I know we had 9/11. Right? I know we had 9/11. And I know this is an election year. Should we go through something similar, it will not be this time it'll be for real. It's not going to be some nefarious act. Don't believe that. Pastor Paul, you'll probably have to fight that issue coming up. You're going to fight the issue that it was not a nefarious act.
That
And
it
in
was
fact, many people will.
in other
You're going to have
words,
to fight the issue and say it was not a nefarious act. So I'd prepare for that.
so in other words, it is a real attack.
Yeah, it's a real one. It's not nefarious, but there are going to be a lot of folks out there who will say it was planned.
And they're going to try to blame it.
They will link it with the elections.
On Trump. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. We'll see you next Thursday night. I will now watch for that as well as South America. Thanks, Mike. I'm going to sleep well tonight. Thank you.
God bless you, Pastor Paul.
All right. God bless. Thanks, Mike. See you next Thursday.
All right.
All right.
Okay.
Mike around the world, folks. He